Hey everybody, Steve here in Palm Springs. I was just reading a comment and it just cracked me up. I couldn't stop laughing, so I thought I would share it with you and see if it makes you laugh too. The comment came from Michigan Woody. He says, 1-year-old instant potatoes? Are you that cheap that you would eat outdated food? For God's sakes, quit being so cheap when it comes to food and the holidays. How many years do you have left to be so damn cheap? I mean, this makes me laugh on a lot of different levels. He's referring, when he says to the holidays, he's referring to my video where I shared that this year we decided to just go really, really simple. And instead of making a big holiday Thanksgiving dinner, we just went with frozen turkey dinners. And they were fine. They were like $3 or something. They were fine. And I mentioned in that video that I still had this box of instant potatoes from last year. Now, I thought it was open. I thought it already maybe used half of it, but it hasn't even been open. So I mentioned that we would probably make this as well to go along with the turkey dinner, rather than letting them go to waste and throwing them away. Now, this only cost me $1 when I bought this last year. So my first question for Woody is, what do you have against being cheap? I mean, why are you so against saving money? I mean, that made me laugh. So even though it made me laugh, I felt like I probably should explain it a little bit. Maybe I haven't been clear in the past. I'm not being cheap just to be cheap and because I'm hoarding all my money and I don't want to spend it. Just the opposite. I just don't like spending money on things that I don't care about, things that are unimportant, that shouldn't be expensive. That way, I can take the money that I save and spend it on things that I really want to spend it on. I'm not hoarding my money. I just choose to spend it on the things that I really like spending it on. The bigger point is about the 1-year-old potatoes. Well, I was looking at the expiration date on this, and actually it's not even an expiration date. It's a best by date, and it says best by November 9th, 2024, or best used by November 9th, 2024. Well, that was a year ago, but these are just dried potatoes with preservatives. These are probably going to last for 10, 20 years. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that probably if these were in my cupboard 10 years from now and I tried them, they would probably taste pretty similar to what they taste like today. Certain things just don't go bad. Maybe potatoes do, I don't know. But there are things that, like canned foods and other things that they really don't really ever expire, or they might take 5 to 10 years to expire. I remember growing up, back in the 50s and 60s, we didn't have expiration dates. Foods just didn't have expiration dates. You just kind of figured it out yourself. You would smell it. You could look at it. If the meat was gray, it was probably not good. If it had a bad odor to it. Milk, dairy products, you could tell right away if milk has gone bad. You can smell it and you know if it's gone bad. Well, I'm not going to drink spoiled milk or eat rotten meat or anything like that. But these are probably going to be okay for quite a few years. And I'm not going to eat these just to save $1. This was just $1. I could easily throw these away, but that would be crazy. So I looked it up online because I was like, well, when do they come up with expiration dates or best used by dates? And that wasn't until the 70s when companies started introducing best by dates. And I think part of the reason they did that was because they realized, oh, we can make a lot more money if we can convince consumers that these products are no longer good after 6 months or a year. They'll throw them away and buy some new ones, so we can make a lot more money than if they just went ahead and used them. Now, it's just my opinion, but I think probably a lot of you would agree with me that probably a huge portion of the food where they say it's best used by this date is really just to encourage you or to scare you into thinking it might be bad, so you should throw it away and buy a new box of mashed potatoes. And this year it's $1.50 maybe. And so they're just making a lot more money. And I do remember reading about and hearing about back in the 60s and 70s where companies on purpose decided to start making products that didn't last as long. They even had a word for it, planned obsolescence or something obsolescence, where they would just, like when I was growing up, 50s and 60s, you would buy something and it would just last forever. You could buy a pair of shoes And as long as your feet didn't grow bigger, you could wear those the rest of your life probably and they'd never wear out. I mean, clothes would last forever. Well, companies got wise to the fact that people weren't buying enough stuff to keep them in business. So they started making things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So your shoes would only last a year. Your clothes would only last a year or so. So you'd have to keep buying new clothes and new products. TVs wouldn't last as long, washing machines. I mean, everything used to be made so well, and companies prided themselves on making products that lasted forever. Well, then they realized, well, that's stupid. It's going to put us out of business, all these really great products that we've created. So let's start making them real cheap so people have to keep buying them over and over throughout their lifetime. And then they realized they can also do that with food. Another motivation might have just been health reasons. Maybe there were some people that didn't realize you should smell your meat before you eat it, and that maybe they were getting sick by eating spoiled meat. Maybe they didn't have a sense of smell, or maybe they were colorblind and couldn't tell that the meat was gray, or it turned a weird color. So I mean, I can see how with certain things it might be helpful to certain people to at least be aware of, okay, some of these things may expire. Well, like cheese. That doesn't really last a long time, but you can really tell if it's gone bad because you start getting the mold on the cheese. So most things that get old and shouldn't be eaten, they either have a smell or something happens, like they get mold on them. So bread gets mold on it and stuff. So I'm not that cheap that I'm going to eat cheese with mold on it or milk that has curdled and is sour. But then this comment also got me thinking about, how did I become so cheap? I didn't grow up poor. I grew up in a household where we could afford anything we wanted, for the most part. But my grandparents grew up in the Great Depression. And in fact, my grandfather, from what I had heard, was pretty wealthy growing up. But during the Great Depression, he lost everything. He lost his fortune. And so I think, and my grandmother grew up poor on a farm. And then on top of that, then she went through the Great Depression. So I think I grew up hearing from them. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and they probably also passed it on to my mom. So I don't consciously remember it. I just kind of remember them talking about not wasting things and teaching us as kids not to waste things. And I really got that message very strongly. And I think also just watching them, they never wasted anything. Even though years later, when they were older, they worked very hard and were very lucky and had a lot of money. They did really, really well for themselves, but they never stopped being cheap. And so I guess maybe that was the lesson that I got, is that no matter how much money you have, it's still smart to be cheap, or at least to be frugal and maybe not even frugal and cheap, but just not wasteful. It's kind of your responsibility in a way too. I also got that message in the 70s, probably in school and in college, when you start realizing how many people around the world don't have enough to eat, don't have the means to buy the things that they need, and then you realize that you do. I think if you just care about other people and the planet, I think you're going to want to not take advantage of all the extra things that you have that other people don't have. So I think it's just being a good neighbor, just being a good person, and not being wasteful just because you can. The other thing is, I just was reading just the other day, somewhere they were saying that Americans, people here in the US, we are the most wasteful people when it comes to food, especially, of anyone on the planet. We waste, I forget what it was, where I read this, but I think they said it's either a third or a quarter of all the food that we buy in the grocery store gets thrown away. We have so much food in our refrigerators. The stuff gets put to the back, we forget it's even there, and then we find it a couple months later when it actually has expired and gone bad, and we end up throwing it away. So quarter to a third of all the food that we buy as Americans just gets thrown in the trash because we're so wasteful and so thoughtless, and we can afford to just let it go to waste and to throw it away and buy some more. And then we complain about how expensive everything is at the grocery store. So yeah, it's kind of weird. So my cheapness really comes from not being cheap, but really just not wanting to be wasteful. How about you guys? Do you eat food after the expiration date or the best use by date? Would you eat these potatoes that have a best by date of a year ago, or would you throw them away? So anyway, thanks for the question, Woody, and thanks for the laugh. Even though I'm sure you didn't intend it to be funny, it still kind of made my day and made me laugh. So unless I die after eating these expired mashed potatoes, I'll see you all in the next video.